Welcome back to Rhino Men, the book, the channel. If you're just joining us, I am a writer of a new upcoming absurd action comedy novel about a seriously strong, exceptional hero who finds himself up against a horde of incredibly dangerous and strong Rhino Men. Kind of makes sense considering the title of the book. It's about Rhino Men spreading a bit like a zombie plague throughout New York City and beyond. And how will the main character, Rhino Portcullis, overcome this? And what's his involvement with these Rhino Men? So today I'm going to give you a bit of a reading from later in the book. I read chapter 1 in the last video. I don't want to give the entire story in these videos. I just think, what's the point of writing a book then if I'm just going to tell the whole story and read it all out on YouTube? But this is a chapter which is kind of self-contained. It's about two side characters who are sent on a mission by the main character, Rhino Portcullis, to go out and hunt down these Rhino Man children. So there's one initial Rhino Man, and then from this Rhino Man comes the contagion. There's a spread. Through very scientific means it spreads, which you'll find out in the book. But ultimately, where there's one Rhino Man, there will be more. Now, the two characters that I'm reading to you about today are Chucky Balboza, a 60-something-year-old bartender who happens to get caught up in it, and Dr. Bartholomew Quest, MD, who is also just a random guy who was there at the time when the Rhino Man arrived. And Rhino sets them on a task to go and hunt down these 13 Rhino Man children with the intention of stopping the spread of this contagion of Rhino Men. They will use any means necessary to kill the children, and in fact they've killed many already at this point in the story. This is chapter 15. So they've been hunting down these Rhino Man children, but the problem is, over time, the Rhino Man children are getting bigger quickly. So they need to hunt them all down before they reach sexual maturity and are able to spread the contagion. So they've been hunting them down, killing them with hammers, guns, whatever. But now they've come to a point where they're hunting down the final one. And if they can kill this final Rhino Man, then there won't be a contagion. They will have saved the day, which would be great. Let's see how it goes. Across town, Chucky Balboza and the esteemed doctor, Bartholomew Quest, MD, were actually doing fairly well in their hunt for the 13 ill-begotten rhino children. By their count, there was only one left to find, and they had been fortunate to find the majority of them running amok in a shoe shop, where Barboza and Quest had been able to shoot and stab them all to death pretty easily. Several of the mothers had also needed to be killed too, but that was pretty much their fault for defending their offspring despite the obvious dangers associated with rearing them. Plus, there had been no witnesses to any of this, except the shoe shop worker who seemed pretty cool, which was really useful as it meant the whole of New York had not yet succumbed to panic and, God forbid, looting. Tired, blood-soaked, and refreshing themselves with a few stiff whiskies on a street corner, the duo were now worried that the final monster might have evaded them and may, within the next few hours, achieve sexual maturity, the exact thing they couldn't let happen. If that final Rhino Man child becomes an adult, shit is going to get really bad really quick, said Bartholomew Quest, taking a piss in a phone booth. Yes, you're right, replied Chucky, whose eyes had glazed over, succumbing to an exhaustion-induced hypnosis as he gazed at the good doctor's near-infinite stream of urine as it cascaded down the phone booth window. Chucky smiled as the urine stream caught a ray of sunshine, with a sparkling rainbow being briefly visible before a dark cloud passed overhead, ending the beautiful moment and returning Chucky to the rather grim reality of the current situation. His actions were weighing heavily on his conscience, even though they really shouldn't have. The past few hours had been a blur of bullets, blood, and the visceral, haunting screams of both the Rhino children and their wrongly defensive mothers. Screams he would never forget. Screams which would haunt him in both his dreams and his waking life until the day he died. Screams which he would now compare to screams in movies and would be able to think things like, "That's not how someone screams when they're getting a machete to the groin." He'd grown so much. He'd changed so much. So this is what a war hero feels like, thought Chucky. The problem is, said Bartholomew Quest, MD, that we're searching for a needle in a goddamned haystack. The odds of finding this thing before it does sexually mature are so low it practically beggars belief. Just then, the two men heard a loud crash. Alert, they both began to scan the streets, most keenly to find the source. "Duck!" shouted Chucky, as a school bus flew, apparently out of nowhere, through the sky, directly at them. Chucky grabbed Quest, pulling them both to the ground as the upside-down bus flew past their heads, smashing through the piss-soaked phone booth and into a cafe behind them, and instantly exploded, presumably killing all of the children in the bus and at least 2 baristas. Disoriented amidst the plumes of smoke, falling debris, blaring sirens, and the screaming public, Chucky managed to get to his feet. But what was that vague silhouette of a figure in the distance? It was shrouded by a sudden fog, and appeared much larger than a regular man, with a far more pronounced, snout-like face, and possibly a party hat on its head? Or perhaps a fake unicorn horn? "What's that over there?" said Dr. Bartholomew Quest, MD, as he clambered to his feet. He held his signature machete with a tight grip by his side. "I can't tell," replied Chucky, opening up his shotgun to check it was loaded, which it was. A harrowing howl pierced the fog, echoing through the New York street. The howl was wolf-like, with a 30% similarity to a shrieking swine. The figure, for that is all Chucky could confidently say it definitely was, seemed to stalk forwards, with the largeness of its frame becoming more and more apparent with each lumbering step. "Just what the hell am I looking at?" asked Quest, squinting his eyes really tight to try and make out exactly what it was that was walking towards them. "It threw a fucking bus at us, Doctor, so whatever it is, I'd say it's pretty powerful," replied Chucky, pointing his shotgun into the mist, which had stopped just in front of them. "Be on your guard, Chuck. It might be the Rhino Man child we were looking for. As ridiculous as that sounds, considering the odds of finding it in such a large city," replied Dr. Quest. "It couldn't be! Didn't you, but moments ago, state that the odds of finding that one final Rhino Man child were equivalent to locating a needle in a... what was it?" "A haystack," replied the good Dr. Bartholomew, squinting his eyes so tight to try and see what was before him that it was surprising he could see anything at all, which he couldn't due to the overwhelming amount of smoke and fog. Another terrifying holler reverberated through the New York City street, with the possible, but unlikely, Rhino Man-child continuing to progress at a steady pace towards the gentleman. "If it is the Rhino Man-child," said Quest, quickly sniffing some smelling salts to boost his vigour in preparation for the worst, "we had better be damn sure to hit it in the vitals quick sharp, as by now it would probably be all the way matured, if not very nearly there. We can't afford to get into fisticuffs, despite your obvious skills." "We just won't have a chance." Flattered by the good doctor's complimentary warning, Chucky took out his own smelling salts and gave them a massive sniff. "Agreed, Doc. I will aim for the head and you knife the balls." "The balls!" ejaculated Dr. Quest. "Of course!" "Huh?" replied Chucky, unsure what the good doctor was so excited about. "Shh!" hushed Quest, putting his finger against Chucky's lips. It was still a bit shitty from earlier. Then Quest gestured for Chucky to listen. Chucky focused on the sounds around him. A few quiet cries from at least one of the surviving children who'd exploded in the bus. The relaxing gush of a broken fire hydrant. His own heart thumping with adrenaline. What was he listening for? Then he heard it. Clack. Chucky's eyes widened in realization, but the good doctor pushed his dirty finger even closer into the bartender's lips. Chucky held his breath, listening intently. Clack, clack. Bartholomew Quest's own eyes widened and shone, especially his glass eye, with realization. He nodded at Chucky Balboza, who nodded back, releasing his lips at last. Chucky understood. The clacks that they had heard just now had emanated from the enshrouded approacher's large, dangling balls, the kind of resonant clack which can only emanate from a fully or nearly fully matured man/rhino hybrid or similar creature. And as slim as the chances were that this approaching figure was the very same they had been searching for, it was even less likely that the unknown approacher would be a different type of creature bearing an equivalent set of balls, creating the exact same resonant ball sound which Chucky and Quest both instinctually understood could only come exclusively from such a creature. That would have been preposterous. A gust of wind swept through the street, sending a thick plume of mist swirling to the side and momentarily revealing the creature to be a Rhino Man child after all. It was huge, though not quite as large as the original Rhino Man from the old meat factory. Still, it carried itself with a menacing maturity the previous Rhino children had not, lacking the uncanny cuteness the younger fledglings held. This one was practically full grown, with muscles larger than any bodybuilder Chucky had ever seen, and he had seen a lot of them, being a bodybuilding enthusiast, if not a participant himself, preferring to keep a slim build for the betterment of his bartending. The Rhino adolescent's long snout was covered in dry blood, and its piercing eyes, so similar to Viridian portcullises, observed the two men with murderous intent. "I think it wants revenge for all its siblings we murdered," whispered Chucky, trying to stop his hands from trembling. "Pop the head, I've got the balls," whispered Quest, taking 3 quick sniffs of smelling salts before bellowing a barbaric war cry and charging like a Viking warlord into the newly re-thickened mist. "Fuck!" yelled Chucky Balboza, raising his shotgun and squinting his eyes ridiculously tightly to try and pinpoint the location of the Rhino Man-child in the mist. "Ah!" yelled the good doctor, but Chucky couldn't be sure if it was a scream of valiant rage or indeed a scream of excruciating pain. The two of them had already been totally surrounded by the thick, creamy mist, with only occasional fists and kicks emerging from the cloud like a Looney Tunes brawl. "The head!" shouted Quest. "Shoot the fucking—" His voice was cut off, replaced with a massive squelch. Then Chucky was left, standing on the remarkably distinct border of the mist, his back feeling the heat from the burning cafe behind him. There were no discernible movements within that thick, creamy, sweaty mist. A fox yelled from a distant alleyway. "Doctor!" called Chucky, clutching his shotgun with a rigidity unbefitting of his usual cool posture. Against every instinct, he took a step forward, towards the mist. He was squinting ludicrously tightly in an attempt to see the threat he knew to be lurking inside of the mist. Clack, 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 came a clacking noise, moving this way and that at great pace from within the mist. "The Rhino adolescent is clearly running if his balls are clacking that fast," Chucky thought. "Can't let him flank me. Pop the head." A hideous shriek suddenly erupted from Chucky's left flank. He turned and instinctively fired his shotgun, killing an old injured lady with a walking stick who was apparently just scared and had decided to shriek at this inopportune moment. "Shit on a stick!" grunted Chicky. "Shit on a stick," grunted Chucky, fumbling to reload the shotgun and finding all of a sudden that the creamy, thick mist had moistened his hands to the point that each shotgun shell felt to him as a bar of soap feels to an inmate. Impossible to hold on to. Scrambling on all fours to pick up but a single shell for his weapon, Chucky now saw the Rhino adolescent emerge from the mist like a leaping tiger, huge balls clacking thunderously directly at him. Chucky gasped, falling onto his back as the huge beast closed in on him from above. "Fuck you!" shouted Chucky. He knew his life was over. Well, there you have it, a little sample there. That mist sure is something. If you like the sound of that, you enjoyed it, you found it somewhat funny, despite having basically no context, then please do subscribe, give the video a like, follow for more updates, and I'll be in touch soon with more news and more shit. Bye!